Hi, tonight we're going to be reading the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. In Persia, that's a country that's a long ways away from here, there once lived two brothers. Qasim, the older brother, had married a rich woman and so lived in a very fine house. But Ali Baba, the younger brother, had married a woman as poor as himself, and he had to work hard for a living. He had managed to scrape together enough money to buy 3 donkeys. Every day he drove the donkeys into a nearby forest and loaded them with firewood, which he then sold in the public market. One hot afternoon, Ali Baba was sweating from all his hard work, and he had just finished loading his 3 beasts with their daily burden of wood when he saw a lot of horsemen galloping toward him. Uh-oh, Ali Baba thought. Only thieves could be in such a hurry on a hot day. I had best hide myself. And so he prudently tethered the donkeys in a thicket where they could not be seen from the road, and he quickly climbed into a tree. The band of horsemen came up to a stop directly under the tree where Ali Baba was hiding. Oh, he could hardly breathe. He was afraid they'd find out. They'd look up and see where he was at. As they dismounted, he counted them, and he discovered that there were exactly 40 thieves. One of them, probably the captain, stepped up to a flat boulder on the rocky hillside and said in a deep, clear voice, "Open, Sesame!" At once the boulder swung open like the door of a castle, and the 40 thieves stepped inside. As soon as the last one had crossed the threshold, the door swung shut, and not even the sharpest eyes could have told where the opening had been. Ali Baba was trembling so that he nearly fell out of the tree, but he did manage to hold on until the 40 robbers reappeared. The leader said, "Shut, Sesame!" and once more the boulder swung back into place. Then the 40 thieves galloped off. Ali Baba stayed there in the tree for quite a while, as he could see until he could see the last speck of dust from the galloping hoofs. When he was certain that the robbers were out of sight, he climbed down. All the while he had been saying, "Sesame, Sesame, Sesame, can't forget it, Sesame," over and over to himself so that he wouldn't forget the name of the grain that the robber chief had used as the magic password. He stepped up to the boulder and said, "Open, Sesame." Immediately, the door flew open. Ali Baba entered and found a big, huge cavern. Didn't have a whole lot of light in there. It was just dimly lighted from the cracks in the roof, and piled high with treasure chests, sacks of gold, coins, jewels, bales of rich silks, and all manners of loot. And off in one corner, guess what he saw? Mr. Bert the cat. He was hiding in there. Yep. Along with all the things the thieves had stolen and hidden in there. Leaving the silks and the jewels for a later trip, Ali Baba took only as much gold as he thought his 3 donkeys would carry. Once again he said the magic word and the door flew open. Quickly, Ali Baba took out the firewood from the saddle baskets and put in the gold, covering it really well with a few sticks of wood, and then he said, "Shut, Sesame," as the thief had done, and hurried back to town as fast as the donkeys would go. He put the donkeys in the stable, tossed them a handful of hay, and carried the baskets into the house. "Have you gone crazy?" his wife said when she saw him. "Why are you bringing the wood into the house?" Take it back out. Aren't you gonna be selling it? Ali Baba said, Shh, don't talk so loudly. And he closed the curtains and locked the drawers. His wife did as she was told, but when Ali Baba opened the bags and poured out the gold in a glittering heap, she shrieked in amazement. Wow! Hush, said Ali Baba. Do you want the neighbors to hear? And he warned her that they must spend their new wealth only a little bit at a time, so that no one would suspect that they had found a treasure. His wife promised that she would not rest until she had found out how much gold her husband had brought. At first, she tried to count it, but then it got too much. She couldn't count that high. She probably hadn't gone to school for very long, because back then ladies didn't go to school. So she didn't know what to do about this. How could she find out how much money she had? So she thought, I have seen people in the market weighing the gold. But, well, they were too poor and they didn't have any scales for weighing it. And then she remembered her sister-in-law, Kasim's wife, had a nice set of scales. So she decided she'd go over and ask Kasim's wife to lend her the scales. Now, Kasim's wife, she was a little bit curious as to what poor Ali Baba could have needed for weighing the gold. So she rubbed the bottom of the scales with mutton fat, hoping that whatever they touched would stick. Sure enough, when the scales were returned, a gold coin was sticking to the bottom. Ali Baba's wife hadn't really checked them out too well. Kasim's wife immediately told her husband, and the two wondered about their brother's sudden wealth until they were sick with jealousy. How could he have gold? At last Kasim could stand it no longer, and he went to Ali Baba and demanded to know how he had gotten so much gold that he had to weigh it. Ali Baba saw that he would have to tell his brother because there was just no way of hiding it anymore. And as they were easily to tell his brother about his secret, and as there was easily enough treasure in the cave to make them both rich, he told them the magic word. He thought, my brother, he can't carry off all of the stuff in that cave. The next morning, Kasim was up before daybreak. He was determined to go to the cave and get all that he could before Ali Baba would have a chance. With him he took 10 donkeys, loaded with the biggest baskets he could find. He found the rock, and having said the word, "Open sesame," he went inside and began filling his saddle baskets. At last they were full, but there was so much treasure left in the cave that the greedy brother wished he had brought 20 bad donkeys. He was so upset about leaving so much treasure behind that he completely forgot the magic word. Uh-oh. All he could remember was that the magic word was some kind of grain. So he said, "Open, barley." No, wait. The rock remained solid. Then he tried, "Open, wheat." Still nothing. Oh, he tried all the different kinds of grains that he could think of, and he was pulling on his hair because he was so mad because the door wouldn't budge. And then the thieves came back. and they were bringing a whole lot more loot that they had taken from some more unfortunate travelers. The minute the door swung open, Cassim darted out, hoping to escape, but the robbers caught him and put him to death. They hung his body inside the cave as a warning for anyone else who might have figured out their secret, and then went on their way. Meanwhile, Cassim's wife, she started getting a little bit worried at her husband's failure to return. At length, she went to Ali Baba and told him that Cassim had done. Remember, he went in to see all the treasure. Ali Baba warned her not to tell anyone, and then he set out to find the cave again. He found Cassim quickly enough and brought the body back with him, hidden in the donkey's saddle basket under a pile of wood. He comforted the poor wife as best as he could, and he told her that he and his family would come to live with her so that he could look after his brother's son and manage his affairs. The wife agreed very readily, and the two households became one that very day. In the meantime, Ali Baba spoke to one of Cassim's serving maids, Morgiana by name, who was devoted to the family and had long served them faithfully and well. Morgiana promised to devise a scheme so that no one should know that Cassim had been murdered. They were afraid that since his body was missing in the cave, well, obviously the thieves knew somebody had gotten in there, and so they were going to try to find out where Cassim's body was. Well, obviously, find out who's having a funeral. So, Morgiana went to a seller of herbs and powders and requested some medicine that was really strong. When asked to whom the medicine was to be given, Morgiana pretended to weep bitterly and said it was for her master, who suffered great pain and could not be expected to live until morning. In this way, news of Cassim's illness spread about, and no one was surprised to hear that he had died the next day. While all this was taking place, the thieves did go back to their cave and found that Cassim's body was missing and more of their treasure was missing. They decided to send one of their number to the town disguised as a traveler to try to find out who had discovered their secret. This spy was to look for two things. One, a man who had been murdered, and maybe someone who had all of a sudden become very wealthy. The spies soon discovered that Ali Baba was the answer to both questions, since he was newly rich and had a brother who had died of an illness that hadn't lasted very long. The leader of the band then thought of a clever scheme to get inside of Ali Baba's house without arousing suspicion. He pretended to be an oil merchant and managed to reach Ali Baba's house just at sunset. Since there was no inn, that's like a hotel, he asked Ali Baba to shelter him and his donkeys for the night. Ali Baba agreed, and the donkeys, each laden with huge oil jars, passed inside Ali Baba's gate. The first few jars did indeed contain oil, but inside each of the others crouched a thief. Uh-oh. Now it happened that Morgiana, needing some oil for a lamp, went to one of the jars and discovered the trick. She summoned another servant to help her. Working quietly, they poured boiling oil into each of the jars, killing the whole band of robbers except the leader, who was pretending to be asleep inside the house. When the leader came to wake his men up for the attack on Ali Baba, he found that all his band had been boiled alive. He quickly made his escape, but he swore to have his revenge on Ali Baba. A few days later, he returned to the town in a different disguise and made friends with Cassim's son, who soon invited the stranger to his house for dinner. Ali Baba didn't recognize the man, but the smart Morgiana did, and she saw that the thief had a dagger hidden inside his shirt. As soon as the dinner was over, she dressed herself as a dancer and came to entertain the guests. Little did the guest little did the thief guess what sort of entertainment she planned, for he did not see the dagger she had hidden under her sash. She flung herself at his feet as if asking for a reward, and as he reached for a few coins, she whirled out the dagger and stabbed him. Ali Baba and young Cassim cried out in horror, but their horror was soon changed to joy when Morgiana showed them who their guest really was. Young Cassim was so overcome with her cleverness that he asked Morgiana to marry him at once. She said yes, and the wedding was held really soon. Now that all the thieves were dead, the whole treasure in the cave belonged to Ali Baba and Mr. Bert the cat, who was still hiding inside there. And guess what? They used it wisely and lived in great honor, as did their children after them. Hope you enjoyed it.